solving the everyday issues that matter to people across Scotland, like how we clear the record patient backlog in our NHS, how we get Scottish education back up the international rankings, or how we deliver a transition to net zero without decimating the North East economy and the livelihoods in that part of the country. And we have a unique, once-in-a-generation opportunity to change course. Because it's quite clear, the SNP have put their political obsession with separating Scotland from the rest of the United Kingdom on the line. John Swinney has produced a manifesto that has on the entirety of the first page the words, "Vote SNP for Scotland to be an independent country." The Nationalists aren't even trying to hide it. They are running a single-issue campaign and treating the general election as a proxy independence referendum. The SNP are on the back foot, and they know it. They have nothing positive to offer our country. Nothing to show from SNP MPs who spent their time pushing independence instead of pursuing the interests of their constituents. Nothing to show from an SNP government that has made independence their top priority. Instead, they're appealing to a nationalist minority and ignoring the majority of people. People who've had enough and just want our country to move on. John Swinney is focusing on his desire to separate Scotland from the rest of the UK instead of apologising for the SNP's record in government and the 17 years he has been at the heart of it. Honest John, as he doesn't like to be called, should accept what 17 years of SNP government have done to Scotland. A government that's failed patients with a botched NHS recovery plan and 1 in 7 Scots on an NHS waiting list. A government that's failed our pupils by cutting teacher numbers and dumbing down schooling. A government that has failed workers and businesses with higher taxes to pick up the tab of the SNP's failures. But instead of campaigning on plans to tackle all of those issues, all John Swinney has to offer is banging the same old drum for independence one more time. Well, right across Scotland, people are sick and tired of the SNP saying that independence is the only solution to the challenges facing our country. Of making excuses for failing to use the powers they have by saying that they need more powers. The Scottish people want our country to move on, to come back together again and go forwards together to a better future. But they know so long as this tired and stale debate continues, we will be stuck with the oxygen being sucked out of the issues that really matter. Independence is a priority for the SNP. That will never change. But it doesn't have to be the priority of our national debate any longer. If the SNP don't just lose this election in Scotland, but have a terrible result and are defeated right across the country, then we will have put the nationalist political obsession to rest for a generation. Scotland will have again firmly said no to independence, no to more division, no to 5 more years of separatist campaigning and distraction. That will be the verdict that John Swinney and his SNP government cannot ignore. They have put independence on the ballot paper, and they're looking for a blank cheque to ignore the priorities for another 5 years. And they should pay the price for that arrogance. And the only way to deliver that clear message is by ensuring that people in key seats up and down the country vote Scottish Conservatives on the 4th of July. In the North East, Perthshire, East Renfrewshire, Garland Butte, Ayrshire, the Borders, and in many other areas, it's a straight fight between the Scottish Conservatives and the SNP. Voting for any other party, or not voting at all, risks letting the SNP win. And with a number of races here in Scotland finely balanced, that is a risk we cannot allow. If we beat the SNP, then we get the focus onto your priorities, onto the issues the SNP have ignored for 17 years. And this positive manifesto we're outlining today sets out a number of clear plans, working with the UK government to do just that. Firstly, we would repair Scotland's roads. We would give councils the fair deal they need to stop the SNP from taking money away from them and ensuring that they can't spend it on local services. They need the resources to properly fix the potholes that blight local roads. And we would deliver on the SNP's broken promises to communities across Scotland by making the upgrading of key roads like the A9, the A96, the A1, the A90, the A83, the A77 and the A75 our top infrastructure priority. The Scottish Conservatives will always back drivers, not tax them like the SNP and the Greens have done. Next, we would eradicate the NHS backlog by delivering a modern, efficient local service. We will recruit 1,000 additional GPs and guarantee a GP appointment within 1 week anywhere in Scotland. And we will ban the closure of local health care services and reverse years of SNP centralisation within our NHS. This would enable us to take pressure off of our hospitals and give them a chance to get to grips with the record waiting times and 840 of our fellow Scots currently here today in Scotland on an NHS waiting list. Then we would restore Scottish education back to the world-class standards it once had by giving schools more autonomy. We would back our teachers to teach by reducing bureaucracy and would widen subject choice, particularly in our rural schools. We'd also make our streets safer by cracking down hard on crime. We'll put an extra 1,000 police officers onto our street, and we will bring an end to the SNP's weak justice system, which sees rapists avoid jail. We will introduce whole life sentences to ensure that life really does mean life, and put justice on the side of victims, not on the side of criminals. And the final element of our top 5 priorities is ensuring that we reduce family bills across Scotland by cutting their tax. UK Government action this year, alongside the National Insurance tax cuts planned in this manifesto, will reduce the tax bill for Scottish workers by up to £2,260 per year. And today I can announce that we would do our part here in Scotland by abolishing the intermediate rate of income tax as an immediate priority. This would not just close the tax gap. This would not just close the tax gap between Scotland and the rest of the United Kingdom, but it would reduce the tax bill for workers by up to £171 per year. And we'd also raise the threshold for LBTT to £250,000, saving every single buyer of a new home here in Scotland up to £2,100 on the cost of their home. Another area that's featured heavily in this campaign, and I'm heading up to the North East to take part in a debate later on today, and the Prime Minister has focused his remarks earlier, is our oil and gas sector. And this manifesto puts the Scottish Conservatives full square behind Scotland's oil and gas industry. Unlike Labour and the SNP, who would crash the economy of the North East and put 100,000 jobs at risk by opposing new investment, we are unwavering in our support for new licences and the new investment to secure the industry's future. We know that net zero tomorrow is reliant on a strong energy sector today, in which oil and gas has a crucial and important role to play. Our manifesto also ends central belt bias that we've seen from the SNP for 17 years to ensure that we can deliver for the whole of the country. We would see that rural interests are placed at the heart of decision making, and that farming and fishing communities are supported and their produce championed. This and so much more is what every Scottish Conservative will be working hard to deliver for years. Our priorities are your priorities? And by voting Scottish Conservatives in key seats to beat the SNP, together we can make them Scotland's future. Friends, this election has been a tough scrap, but no one thought it would be easy. And if there is anything we as Scottish Conservatives know, it's that elections are won by hard campaigning, going street to street, door to door. In the 2014 independence referendum, when the polls started to show that yes were ahead, we didn't give up. We dug deeper, put in the hours and delivered a resounding win. And in 2021, when Nicola Sturgeon looked all but unstoppable, we got on with the job. We redoubled our efforts and we ensured that she failed to win the majority that she craved so much. We are up for this fight, just like the Prime Minister. He's continuing to take the fight to Keir Starmer's Labour Party. He is the only leader. He is the only leader with a clear plan to take our country forward and to deliver a better, more secure future for Scotland and the whole of the United Kingdom. So can I welcome to the stage to talk more about his plan, our Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak.
Thank you, thank you. Well, Douglas, thank you. Actually, I'll start with football as well. As a Saints fan, long-time admirer of Stuart Armstrong, so I completely agree with Douglas that it was a penalty. And it is great to be here with you all in Edinburgh, and especially to be with Douglas, because if Douglas and all of you had not held the line in 2021, Nicola Sturgeon would have got her majority, and the history of our United Kingdom would have been very different. So, Douglas, on behalf of us all, thank you for your leadership. And it's only Douglas and his team that have been prepared to properly stand up to the SNP, standing against both Nicola Sturgeon's gender recognition reforms and the Dangerous Hate Crime Act. It shows you that only the Scottish Conservatives have the courage to stand up to the nationalists. Now, I'm proud to be Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and to lead the Conservative and Unionist Party. As your Prime Minister, I see how our United Kingdom is stronger together every single day in this job. We stand taller in the world. We pack a greater economic punch, and we have more security because we stand united. Now, the SNP have let down Scotland. Their independence obsessions mean that they've neglected everything else, letting down Scotland's children, letting down this country. All elections have consequences, but this vote in Scotland matters so much. It will determine whether we have MPs focused on the real priorities of the Scottish people, or whether the divisive constitutional wrangling of the last decade continues. If the SNP win a majority of the seats at this election, they will treat that as a mandate to carry on campaigning for independence for another 5 years. Another 5 years of ignoring your priorities, with MPs achieving little at Westminster. A vote for the Scottish Conservatives is a vote to put this issue to bed, to move past these tired and stale arguments and to go forward united and together. As Douglas said, the SNP have put independence on page 1, line 1 of their manifesto. They have put their political obsession on the line. The 4th of July is Scotland's chance to end the decade of division, to put independence on the back burner for a generation, to get back to the issues that really matter to communities up and down this country. But that can only happen if the SNP are routed. If they do not just lose some seats, but the SNP lose big. And voting Scottish Conservative is the only way to ensure that that happens, because every Scottish Conservative MP returned makes our United Kingdom stronger, and it sends a clear message. Scotland wants politicians who concentrate on the priorities of the Scottish people and not constitutional monomania. Now, we Conservatives have a clear plan and prepared to take the bold action necessary to deliver a secure future for you, your family and our country. We want to give you financial security. So we will cut your taxes and let you keep more of your own money, because you know better than the state how to spend it. And it tells you everything you need to know, that while the SNP are turning Scotland into the high tax capital of the UK, hiking taxes at every opportunity, the Conservative government is cutting tax for workers here in Scotland and across the United Kingdom. We're already cutting taxes by £900 for the average worker by reducing the national insurance tax. And if you offer us your support in this election, we will cut this tax again. But we Conservatives also applaud those who have the courage to start their own business, to try and build something. They're the risk takers, the people who graft hard to make a living, who get our economy growing. But setting up on your own means you don't have the security that those on payroll have. So we must make it worth taking that risk. And that means these people's taxes must be cut. So, in the next Parliament, we will scrap entirely the main rate of self-employed national insurance. A tax-abolished enterprise encouraged. But security also means the security of knowing that you will have a dignified retirement. So we will cut tax for pensioners with the Triple Lock Plus, ensuring that the new state pension is never dragged into income tax. Labour, by contrast, would introduce a retirement tax, meaning that those who rely entirely on the new state pension would be caught by income tax for the very first time in the United Kingdom's history. Now, we know Labour's record, from the 75p state pension increase, from Gordon Brown's £118 billion tax rate on private pensions. It's clear, it's crystal clear, in fact, that your pension simply isn't safe with the Labour Party. Our North Sea industry isn't safe with Labour either. The Conservative government that I lead would always stand full square behind Scotland's North Sea oil and gas industry. We're committed to new licences, more investment in infrastructure and skills, and energy security for our country. We'll deliver a secure future for the North Sea industry and for the workers that it employs, whereas Labour want to stop all new licences in the North Sea from day one of a Labour government. Keir Starmer and Ed Miliband want to tax the UK's oil and gas sector and the 100,000 Scottish jobs that it supports into oblivion. But Labour don't want to ban all oil and gas, it turns out, just British oil and gas. I mean, they would rather virtue signal to eco-zealots than protect jobs here at home. And the SNP, well, they are the North East's great pretenders. They claim to be in favour of new oil and gas, but then they oppose every single field that actually gets a licence. They say that they oppose extending windfall tax on energy companies, but now they want to introduce a second windfall tax. And they say that they will back oil and gas workers, but they hit them with higher and higher taxes each and every year. You can't trust the SNP to stand up for the future of oil and gas, because when push comes to shove, radical environmentalism ahead of pragmatism, livelihoods, there is only one party with a clear and unequivocal position on the future of our oil and gas industry, who are standing up for North East livelihoods and communities. No ifs, no buts, it's the Scottish Conservatives. It is only the Scottish Conservatives who will stand up for the North East fishing industry too. The EU are already making clear that the price of any deal that Labour wants is a sellout of our fishing industry. And who doubts that Keir Starmer would pay that? And while the SNP would surrender all of our new freedoms, it is only the Scottish Conservatives who will stand up for Scotland's farmers from the borders to the North East. We will legislate for a UK-wide food security target. We will increase farming funding and ring-fence it. And this will require the Scottish Government to report on how this money is being spent to support our farmers and boost our food security. We will not let the SNP let down our farmers again. So in this election, we must send the Nationalists the strongest message possible that the people of Scotland want to move on from their independence obsession. And voting reform risks letting the Nationalists off the hook. Don't let your frustration allow the SNP to keep the constitutional debate going. Voting reform risks letting the SNP slip in through the black door. And they are not on the side of who you think they are. Reform are standing candidates here in Scotland that are pro-independence and anti-monarchy. And you all heard what Nigel Farage said about Ukraine. That plays into Putin's hands. That kind of appeasement is dangerous for Britain's security, the security of our allies that rely on us, and will only embolden Putin. So if you want to beat the SNP and stand up for the UK, then you have to vote Scottish Conservative. And in conclusion, I'll just say this. I cannot adequately express what my family and I owe our country. My grandparents came here with almost nothing, and I stand before you as our Prime Minister. In no other country would my story be possible. And that's why I will always work as hard as I can for all of you. In the next 5 years, if you ask me to continue as your Prime Minister, I will do everything I can to deliver for you. I want to make Britain stronger, better, more secure. And we Conservatives will always stand for our United Kingdom and for our values, for aspiration, for freedom, for opportunity, for security. Our country needs a secure future, not more posturing about independence. Our country wants a clear plan and bold action, and it is a vote for the Scottish Conservatives that will secure our United Kingdom's future.